Okay, so for those of you that have watched my stuff in the past, firstly, thank you very much. And secondly, you're probably aware I have a bit of a history with a company called Sensah, specifically with their Empire 11-speed group set. But I noticed this a few months back. So we've got Sensah Empire shifters here, but then we've also got Sensah Team Pro shifters. So what is the difference here? Well, if you've read the title of the episode, congratulations, you've ruined the whole surprise. You ruined it for yourself. But for those of you that haven't, let's find out the difference here and now, baby. Roll the intro. Okay, so many of you will know I love a black, stealthy look, but not just for my bikes, but for me as well. Bruh. And Sirocco, sponsor of today's episode, they've hooked me the frick up. How good does this look? I love this new jersey. It's from their slightly more premium SRX range, uses some nice lightweight fabrics, super comfy out on the bike, and helps keep you nice and cool as well in this hot weather. And the quality of the construction on this thing is great as well. So it's got some nice little touches like reinforcements on the rear pockets to aid in durability and nice flat lock stitching on the seams to make it a bit more comfortable to wear. Plus, this thing is like 41 quid at the moment. I think that's pretty great value if you ask me. Now for bibs, these days I'm rocking their standard Aspen bib shorts, and these are one of the most popular ones they sell actually, and I can see why. They're good value, look great, basically go with everything, and the padding is super nice. I mean, I was in the saddle for 6 hours on Saturday testing out this new group set here, and with these on, not a problem at all. So yeah, these are a cracking set of bib shorts. So yeah, if you did want to check Sirocco out, you can use my link in the description down below, save yourself 10% off the entire site, which is yeah, pretty cool. And it also helps me out a little bit as well, which is even cooler. Yeah, anyway, I genuinely love the Sirocco stuff. I wear it on every single ride that I do. It's good stuff. Anyway, enough of that, and let's have a look at these shifters. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another.
Are you still making those stupid videos?
Yeah? Trace Fellow Production. My name, as always, is, yeah, it's Luke. Right then, Sensah, specifically the Sensah Empire group set that I've dealt with. Now, some of you will already be aware, but some of the engineers over at Sensah are ex-SRAM employees, and seemingly as a result of that, the Sensah Empire group set uses the same cable pull ratios as SRAM. So, for example, if you're running a Sensah Empire group set on your bike, you can swap out the rear derailleur with one from SRAM and it'll work absolutely fine. In fact, if you bear with, yeah, I basically did that last year. So in here, I've got a SRAM rival rear derailleur, and I was running a Sensah Empire one at the time, stuck this rear derailleur on the back and it worked absolutely fine, which is pretty cool. But relatively recently, Sensah started selling these shifters. So they are Sensah Team Pro shifters, which hopefully you can read there. And the interesting thing about these is that they use the same cable pull ratios as Shimano 11-speed group sets like 105 or Tiagra. Okay, so very quickly, for those of you that don't know, cable pull ratios, they basically determine the amount of movement in the derailleurs. So for example, Shimano use a 1.7 ratio, and this means that for every millimeter of cable travel at the shifters, that equates to 1.7 millimeters of movement within the derailleurs. Now, SRAM use a different ratio, I think it's 1.3, and this is basically one of the main reasons why mixing and matching group sets often doesn't work. So yeah, with these Team Pro shifters here, this basically means for the first time I can now match Sensah stuff up with 11-speed Shimano gear. So will that be a sweet dream or, or a beautiful nightmare, as Beyonce said. So yeah, I guess there's only one way to find out, and let's get these installed. Okay, so this is the bike in question. It's my trusty rim brake road bike, and I've had this thing for years and years. And in its current setup, it's running a 2x11 Shimano drivetrain, and up the front here, I'm running these shifters. So these are micro new shifters that I picked up on AliExpress for like 45 quid. And I've already done a review on these, which you can check out up here. But yeah, basically, these things have been great. I've really enjoyed using these. Yeah, nice crispy shifting, great ergonomics actually, nice and robust, really reliable. So yeah, I really like these things. And they're pretty lightweight as well. So for both shifters, it was 433 grams. Now these Team Pro shifters come in a little bit lighter at 413 grams for the pair, but yeah, there's not that much in it really. So these micro news I've had on the bike for about 3,000 miles, something like that. And when I first put them on, a lot of people took offense to these, well, to this older style. So they've got the gear cables coming out of the side of the shifter. So they've got these kind of whiskers. Now I actually really like this older style of shifter. It makes installation on the bike so much easier, especially with an integrated bar like this. So you've only got the brake cable to run through the bar. Yeah, it makes life easier. Anyway, basically, before I rip these off the bike, I just want to give them the kind of credit they're due. Basically, for the price I pay for these things, they've been amazing. Really nice to use. Yeah, just great value all round. Anyway, enough of that, and let's have a quick look at the derailleurs. Okay, so it's a bit of a mix and match at the back here. So I'm running a Tiagra 4700 front derailleur, and that's paired up with a 105 R7000 rear. Now, while we're at the back, this cassette here, I get questions about it all the time. So I'm still running this S-Road cassette. And for those of you that don't know, it's a fully steel cassette, but it's hollowed out and it's really lightweight. But these things are quite good value as well. Now, I am about 2,000 miles into this thing and it's still running well, but I want to put some more miles on it before I kind of give it the green light. So yeah, stay tuned for that review because this thing is actually really cool. Anyway, this whole 11-speed setup is a bit of a jumble of parts, but shifting is actually, well, it's flawless. So I'm keen to see if I can continue the trend of shifting perfection with these Team Pros. So yeah, let's get them installed and find out. Right, cool. So step one of the install is basically to get all the old cables out of the frame. So first thing to do is to go around and undo all of these cable retention bolts here. So I've got the one here for the front brake, do the same for the rear. And then I've got a couple of bolts here for the front derailleur and around the back there for the rear. Once that's done, I can start pulling the cables out. Now the cable housings here, these are all still in really good nick actually. And in fact, the ones for the brake runs, front and rear, I put these housings in, what, like 3 months ago? So yeah, these are basically brand new. So yeah, let's get these bolts undone and start pulling these cables out of the frame. Okay, so this first step is simple enough, but one thing to bear in mind when removing cables from internally routed frames, like these ones, is that you need to run cable guide tubes over those cables before you pull them out. So they look like this and they tend to come included with most of the frames that I've bought in the past, or some of the recabling kits from Jaguar or whatever will include them. Anyway, like I said, before removing the cables, I'll run these over the top like I'm demonstrating here, and you're good to go. And while I've got you, if you're enjoying this stuff that I make, subscribing would be amazing. I've got loads of cool stuff in the works, including a bike build with one of the cheapest disc brake bike frames that I could find on AliExpress. So yeah, subscribing, maybe clicking the like button as well. That'd be awesome. Anyway, let's crack on. Okay, cool. So all of the cables are out of the bike and they're in that little pile of trash in the corner. Right, so I've got the cable guide tubes run through the frame as well, these white tubes, and they're in place ready to reroute the new cables through this internally routed frame. So quick tip for you, if you're doing this for yourself, once the guide tubes poke out of these little holes here in the frame, make sure you tape them down, because if these fall out or fall back into the frame on these internally routed models, it's a massive pain to recable when you put the new shifters on. So yeah, do yourself a favor and tape them down. Right, next up, I'm gonna take the bar tape off. It's yeah, in pretty good nick. There's a few little scuffs in it. So I'll try and reuse it. If not, I've got some fresh stuff in the box there, but we'll get it off and see. And I'll get the shifters off too. Now, the one thing which is yet to be determined, I mentioned only the brake cables run through the bar on these set of shifters because the gears came out of the side, whereas on the new Team Pro shifters over there, both the brake and the gear cables come out the back of the shifter. So I'm gonna try and reuse the existing brake cable housings that are running through the bar already, but I'm gonna have to run some gear cable housing through there as well, so I'm probably gonna have to take this bar off to do that. But yeah, anyway, let's get the handlebar tape and the shifters off and we'll crack on. Okay, so pulling off the bar tape was easy enough. So the stuff here is from Lizard Skin called their Duo bar tape. And as it's like 3 years old, I would normally just chuck it in the bin. But they don't make it anymore, which is a real shame. I love the two-tone look. So if you know of any other bar tape like this, definitely let me know. Right, cool, so quick update for you. I've had to pull the bars off the bike there, and whenever I'm doing jobs like this, kind of pulling my bike apart, I'm always giving the parts that I take off a good once over. So for example, I bought these handlebars like 4 years ago for about 20 quid, and I've given them a good once over looking for cracks or defects forming or anything like that. But yeah, they look absolutely fine. So while it's obviously not an x-ray of the part or anything like that, it just yeah, it's good practice to kind of give these pieces, especially these cheaper Chinese parts, a good once over when you take them off the bike. Anyway, you can see here I've got the brake housing and the gear housing running through the bar, so both go in there and then both poke out the bottom here. Now I still need to get this side done, but I've got a little tip for you. So it can be an absolute nightmare running cable housings through these internally routed bars. So here's a little tip, and I actually picked this up from the comment section a few years ago. So this is the piece of housing that I want to run through the bar, and what I've actually done is I've put a gear cable and I've run it through the piece that I want to pull through. And then what I'll do is I'll get the cable itself and run this through the bar, because it's a lot easier to run a small cable through the little nooks and crannies in here and kind of get it popping out of these little holes. And then once that's done, I can pull the cable through and it'll pull this through with it and it'll get it seated properly. So yeah, a little bit of a tip for you there. Anyway, I'm gonna get that done, and then I'll probably get the other shifter installed on this shifter clamp here, and then get these bars on the bike. So I'll check in with you in a few minutes.
A few moments later.
Okay, right, so the bike is, well, it's nearly put back together actually. So the bars are secured on and the shifters are sat in their final locations on the bike. So a little tip for you here, whenever I'm attaching shifters onto a carbon bar like this, you can see behind that clamping band there's a little bit of plastic or vinyl packaging. So I always put it behind the band there because it serves two purposes. Number one, it helps kind of spread the clamping load a little bit more evenly around the circumference of the carbon. And number two, it also grips onto the carbon a little better than just bare metal. So that's what I always tend to do. Anyway, the Sensah shifters here, the housings are in place. So this is the gear housing. So it comes out the side here, over the top, runs through the bar and out the bottom, and that's the brake there. So it's the same across the other side. So when I actually add the bar tape, I'll secure those down like so, put a little bit of electrical tape around there to keep things nice and tidy. I just need to cut this housing here to length, and then I can start recabling the bike. Once that's done, I'll slap on the bar tape and yeah, it's done. So it's not too big of a job, this one. It only took me, yeah, well, an hour or two really to get to this point. So yeah, that being said, let's crack on, and I'll meet you back here in a few minutes. Okay, one more tip for you. When you come to run the cables back through the bars and the frame, I always give them a very thin coat of oil, which you might spot in this footage. I find it really reduces friction through the cable housings and makes shifting a tad crispier out on the road. Nice. Also, big up the Mac. Rumours, what an album. Kept me sane stuck in the garage by myself. Anyway, back to it. Okay, cool, so it's all finished, all cabled in and buttoned up, and I've yeah, managed to reuse all the old bar tape, which is quite cool. It's a little ropey, but I'll get a few more miles out of it. Anyway, I had a quick go with it on the stand, and the indexing seems to be really good actually. So yeah, it definitely does index with Shimano gear, which is great, but the real test is once I get it out on the road. So with that being said, let the testing commence. Okay, cool. So I'm just out on the maiden voyage with this new group set, and it's all going really well. But there is one thing to point out. So first and foremost, I suppose, the shifting is really nice. So at the back, the shifting is really nice and consistent up and down the range with this 105 derailleur, and the shifting at the front is, yeah, really smooth actually. So really impressed with that. But it's up the front here with these shifters. So the shifting is nice, but have a listen to this. Can you hear that rattling? I'll put it near the shifter. So there's a kind of a rattling coming basically from both shifters. And yeah, every time you go over a little bump in the road, you get a rattle. And it's not the cable rattling in there, it's something inside the body of the shifter. And I know exactly what it is, so let me show you quickly. Okay, cool, so I am back in the garage trying to diagnose that rattling sound. Now, I initially thought it was this. So this is another Sensah shifter here, and you can see on the top there, that little lever on the top, that prevents you from shifting under braking. And I initially thought it was that, that was rattling around in these new shifters. But as it turns out, this little grub screw in the back where you set the kind of brake lever angle, so you can screw it in and it sets the brake levers a little bit closer to the bars. Yeah, it happens to be a really loose fit in there for some reason, and it's the same on the other side. So I've got a little bit of Loctite there, so I'm going to put some of that on the grub screw, put it back into place, and that should sort the rattling. So yeah, I'll see how I get on. Okay, right, so I'm just buttoning everything up, and you can hear, yeah, no more rattling with this shifter here. So I've put some thread locker behind the grub screws on both shifters, but this one was still rattling quite badly. So you can see there's a little plastic end cap on the end here, a cosmetic cap, and this is what it looks like. So similar to the ones Shimano use, I think, and it just kind of slots on the end there. So I took it off and that fell out. So that's a little kind of little nut there basically, and it goes on the end of this threaded rod, which I assume holds part of the shifter assembly together. So yeah, that's the reason why it was rattling around so much. It was rattling around in there behind that plastic cap. So yeah, not particularly impressive, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I've had 5 or 6 sets of shifters from Sensah in the past, and this is the first time it's ever happened, but still, yeah, a little disappointing, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a really, really easy fix. I just put a bit of thread locker on there maybe, and screw it back on, but yeah, this is not something that I should be doing after using these for what, like 35 miles? So yeah, a little disappointed with Sensah on this one. So yeah, not the best possible start for these shifters, but like I said, the fixes were very simple and only took me a couple of minutes really. And in fact, while I was in there, I also gave the smaller moving parts of the shifter a little spritz with this. So this is silicone lubricant spray, so a little spray of that just to kind of dampen any possible chance of rattle from the shifters, or if not this, a little bit of WD-40 would do pretty much the same thing. Now, I understand not everyone is going to have Loctite for those grub screws, so a little bit of grease would probably solve the problem, or if you've got it, some of this would work too. So PTFE plumber's tape, 1 or 2 wraps of that around the grub screw would definitely stop the rattle. Anyway, now totally silent, even over the kind of roughest cut up tarmac. No rattle at all. Not a peep out of these shifters here. It's surprising actually, the level of perceived quality goes through the roof when these things are quiet out on the road. So yeah, check this out. Okay, so since putting some Loctite behind those grub screws and sorting out that little bolt in there, these things, yeah, don't rattle at all. So that's the chain rattling. But yeah, these shifters, yeah, pretty rock solid actually. And like I said, does give a much higher perceived quality when these things are quiet. So now that that's dealt with, what is the actual shifting like? So the shifting performance, actually super nice. I always forget how much I enjoy the kind of light, clicky feel of Sensah out on the road. I mean, the shifters index up really nicely with that 105 R7000 rear derailleur, and once you've got it dialed in, the shifting is pretty superb actually. And the shifting at the front, oh my God, so much better than it used to be. I mean, this is pretty much exactly the same setup that led to that failure of Sensah I covered a few years back where that little lever snapped on me. So yeah, same bars, same frame, same front derailleur, same everything really. And wow, what a difference. So yeah, let me get this up on the stand and I'll show you what we're dealing with. Okay, quick demo at the back here. So I can drop down the cassette 1 gear at a time, like so, 1, 2, 3. I can move up the cassette 2 gears at a time with a full lever swing. So that's 2 there, and another 2, and another 2. And then I can also move up 1 at a time, obviously, like so. So yeah, overall, gear shifting at the back. Yeah, really good actually. So shifting is precise, it's quick, it's crisp. Yeah, pretty damn good. Okay, quick demo up the front here. So shifting up into the big ring can be done with 1 swing of the lever arm, like so. That was quick, nice and easy. And then dropping down requires 2 clicks. 1, 2, and you're back down into the small ring. So yeah, shifting at the front, so much nicer than it used to be. Really quick, really easy, really effortless as well. Doesn't require much tension from what I can feel. So yeah, it's much better than it used to be. That much is very clear. So yeah. Made some nice improvements here, but let me show you the shifters up close and I'll point out a couple of improvements that they've made there as well. Okay, so Sensah have upgraded and updated the design of their shifters over the last few iterations. Now the first kind of update many of you will already be aware of, but this is a Sensah shifter here. And inside is a little lever arm in there, and it's what transmits the movement of the brake lever into the body of the shifter and into the kind of shifting mechanism in there. So that little arm there, that used to be made of plastic, and it's what broke on me a number of years ago, but they've since updated it to an aluminium version to make it more durable. Yeah, and these shifters here, they have the updated aluminium lever arm. Okay, so another improvement they appear to have made with these shifters is in the composition of the rubber they've used on the hoods. So let me grab an older bit here. So on this older one, you can see the rubber has a slightly rougher texture, whereas that's nice and smooth there, basically. And the issue with this older rubber is that after about 1,000 miles or so, it would become quite loose on the hoods, and it wasn't particularly pleasant to hold. I felt like they were let down by the quality of the rubber that they used. Whereas on these updated ones, the rubber seems to be a much higher quality. It's much tauter, firmer. Yeah, a definite improvement there. And the third update they've made to these shifters is difficult to show on camera, so I'll throw up some pictures. But basically, where that little aluminium lever arm I pointed out earlier, where that interfaces with the carbon fiber of the brake lever, I pointed out in a previous episode that the aluminium starts to eat into the carbon fiber after a couple of 100 miles. And Sensah took that feedback on board, and they've updated the design specifically for these carbon fiber levers and included a little nylon or plastic part in there to increase the durability of the shifter overall. So yeah, really good to see. I mean, it's clear to me at least that Sensah, they're dedicated to building a decent product. I mean, changing the manufacturing processes for things like this is not cheap and kind of shows they're willing to invest the money where it counts, really. But after all is said and done, should you get yourself a pair of these shifters? Well, stick around and we'll wrap it up. Okay then, so as these shifters sit on the bike right now, they are great. They're nice and quiet. They shift really well. They're kind of nice to use, and they look really good on the bike as well, if you ask me. So a set of 105 R7000 shifters will set you back about 230 quid at the minute. These ones here, yeah, just over $100. So yeah, just over 100 quid, and they are 70 grams lighter than the 105s as well. And in fact, if you went for the ones that have got the standard aluminium brake levers, because these have the fancy carbon fiber brake levers, but the aluminium variety, they're like 70 quid. They're a little bit cheaper. But are they as good as 105? Not quite. They're very close, but there's just a level of refinement and quality that you get with Shimano gear that's not quite present with these shifters. But they're what? Like, these ones are half the price. Well, a little bit less than half. And in fact, if you went for the standard aluminium ones, that's like a third of the price, maybe a little bit less. And herein lies the trade-off with these shifters. Now, many times with these cheaper parts, they will work absolutely fine out of the box. For example, the gravel frame that I got from iCan was fantastic, no problems at all. And in fact, the group set that I put on that bike, the Sensah SRX Pro group set, was great as well, absolutely no problems. But one of the ways that these companies that produce this cheaper stuff, one of the ways that they can cut costs is by having a less rigorous QA or quality assurance process for stuff that leaves the factory. I mean, looking back at the footage, I can see that for that loose nut that I showed earlier, there was already some blue Loctite pre-applied to that bolt, but it was just the fact that the person putting it together didn't screw it on tight enough. So when you have a less rigorous QA process, stuff like this does slip through the net. So look, I've said this before, and it's a pattern that I always tend to see repeated with these cheaper parts. They will perform at a high level, in many ways similar to some of the name brand equivalents, but often to get them there, to kind of get them to that high level, does take a little bit of an extra step from you. I mean, these shifters are a prime example of that. There was a bit of a rattle, so 5 minutes of problem solving, and then kind of a little bit of fettling, and boom, you've got yourself an excellent set of shifters. So ultimately, do I recommend these Team Pro shifters here? Well, yeah, definitely. For the price, these things are great. Now, they might work completely fine for you straight out of the box, but do be prepared to do kind of a little bit of fettling to get them that extra 5%. If you see what I mean. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that I actually got these shifters here for free a couple months back from Sensah, but it wasn't until I was emailing back and forth with one of you lot out there actually that I realized they were Shimano compatible. So firstly, thank you for that. But one thing I wanted to address is this thing I see in the comments all the time, and it's this view that companies, they'll cherry pick the products that get sent to reviewers like myself, and this won't be indicative of what you as a customer will get. Now, in my experience, this definitely isn't true, and I think you give these companies a bit too much credit, if you ask me. I mean, the Trifox frame that I got sent, a couple of years ago now, the forks had some pretty major issues. They had to be replaced, and I did a whole video about that. The Elite wheels that I got a couple months back, they had an issue with the front hub, so they went away, redesigned the whole hub, and then sent me the updated one once it was fixed. And these shifters here, got these for free, but those have had a few little issues. Now, I'm not saying cherry picking doesn't happen, and I think it's quite healthy actually to have a dose of skepticism for stuff like this that you see online. But in my opinion, it's just going to be some guy or gal sent to the warehouse, picking a product off the shelf and then posting it out to people like me. I don't think it's any more nefarious than that. But yeah, what do you lot out there think? Do you think I've received cherry-picked products in the past? Do you think this is a big problem with the reviewer space? I know we've got some skeptics out there because with these Fastsports wheels actually that I've got on the bike, reviewed these years ago, but I had some guy in the comments say that they weren't from Fastsports, but these are actually zips with the labels peeled off, and then they put the Fastsports logo on and sent me those. So yeah, I'd love to know what you lot think. So yeah, definitely leave me a comment. Anyway, that is all that we've got time for in this episode. So yeah, subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this little piece that I've put together. And if you've got any questions or any comments about any of the stuff that I've done or shown today, then yeah, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to as many of you as I can. Right, it's what? God, it's 10 to 10 nearly. I need to get something to eat, so I think we've got chorizo and tomato thing with some eggs on top for dinner. So, living the life español. Anyway, right, I'm gonna go, so I'll see you all in the next episode. Ciao, ciao. What is it in Spanish? That is Spanish, or is that Italian? You know what, I don't know, I'm not European. Right, see you later, ciao. Okay, so quick bonus clip at the end here for those of you that stuck around. So whenever I put slightly lighter components on my bike, so these shifters are a few grams lighter, I always get questions about what the final weight is. So I've got the scales there, so let's get it on the scale. So just as a recap, this is a large 58 centimeter bike frame. I've got both bottle cages on the bike and both pedals, including these little pedal extenders there. I've also got the Garmin mount on the front, so that's gonna add a few grams, and this little GoPro mount, which I mount my light onto. So yeah, let's get this switched on, and we'll get this weighed in. So you have to excuse me while I do this one-handed. So there we go, and the final weigh-in, 7.305, so just over 7.3 kilograms. I think that's pretty impressive actually. And if I took off the pedals, bottle cages, and these little mounts, which is how the majority of bikes online will be weighed without those things, that would be just over 7 kilos, maybe like 7,050 grams, something like that. So yeah, pretty impressive, I think. Anyway, there we go, final weigh-in for you lot, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao, ciao.